The Marvel Universe is home to some of the most iconic heroes in all of pop culture. Whether it's ensembles like the Avengers, the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, or solo vigilantes like Spider-Man and Daredevil, you're never too far away from a hero in the world outside your window. The main Marvel Universe, designated as Earth 616, is also home to some of the most well-known villains in pop culture as well, with characters such as Thanos, Magneto, Doctor Doom and Galactus all being household names across the world. With this in mind, it's easy for one to wonder what would happen if the combined might of Marvel's good and evil all went head to head. And it's this question that the 1984 crossover event Secret Wars aimed to answer. Secret Wars, initially devised as a tie-in story to an upcoming line of toys, was the first major event book in Marvel's entire history, bringing together an array of characters including the Avengers, Spider-Man and the X-Men to fight the universe's most dangerous villains on Battleworld, under the watchful eye of the mysterious Beyonder. This comic is not only one of the most significant in all of comic book history, it also has a deeply fascinating behind the scenes story of just how it came to be. And in this video, I want to break this story down and explain the origins of Secret Wars, as well as discuss the original ideas for this epic crossover and how it changed the ways that Marvel and the entire comic book industry would tell their stories for many years after it. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. The origin of Secret Wars can actually be traced back to 1978, when Jim Shooter became the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. You see, the 1970s were a turbulent time for Marvel editorially, with Stan Lee stepping down as editor-in-chief in 1972, and over 5 different people attempting to lead the company in subsequent years, often to little success. As such, Shooter, who had only joined Marvel in 1976 after spending a decade working for DC Comics, was hired to replace Archie Goodwin as editor in January 1978, and upon his appointment, realised the desperate need to reform much of the company. While some at the time complained that Shooter maintained strong editorial control, Shooter's approach ensured that the company experienced far fewer delays than ever before. Alongside this, the editor oversaw major reinventions of many now iconic characters, such as John Byrne's Fantastic Four series, Walt Simonson's run on Mighty Thor, and Frank Miller's gritty reimagining of Daredevil. Shooter also fought to institutionalize creator royalties, implementing a company policy that would see creators be paid royalties when their books reached a certain amount of sales, as well as when any of the characters they worked on were licensed into toys. It would be the question of toys though that would set in motion Shooter's most ambitious project yet. You see, in 1984, toy manufacturer Mattel lost their license to produce DC action figures to rival company Kenner Toys, and seeking to stay in the superhero market, they began negotiating with Marvel to license their heroes for a brand new line of toys. The only problem though was that Mattel feared that Marvel's characters weren't quite as well known as DC's, and suggested the company create a new comic book series that would help promote their upcoming toy line. As Jim Shooter recalls,
Kenner had licensed the DC heroes. Mattel had He-Man, but wanted to hedge in case superheroes became the next big fad. They were interested in Marvel's characters, but only if we'd staged a publishing event that would get a lot of attention, and they could build a theme around. Fans, especially young fans, often suggested to me one big story with all the heroes and all the villains in it. So, I proposed that.
With this in mind, Marvel began developing ideas for an epic crossover unlike anything the company had produced before. First announced in the February 1984 edition of the Marvel Age magazine, this series was initially announced as the Cosmic Champions. However, in later issues, the name would be changed to Secret Wars, with Jim Shooter also being announced as its writer. Shooter explained the reason for the name change when discussing the inception of the Secret Wars story. He stated that
Mattel thought that kids responded so well to the word secret, so after a couple of working names bit the dust, we called the story Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars. I didn't need the hassle of writing it, but if I'd given it to any of the regulars, say Claremont, Byrne, or Michelini, there would have been a lot of carping and complaining by the others. Pretty much every writer had a jealous, protective, almost proprietary feeling about his or her characters. A good thing in a way, and I figured that the surest way to start a brawl in the bullpen was to give one writer a year's worth of opportunities just to piss off the rest. So, I wrote it. I figured that they were all usually mad at me anyway. And I was the boss, the man designated by Marvel to be responsible for the characters, so nobody could really argue with what I did.
Alongside artists Mike Zeck and Bob Layton, Shooter got to work creating the various details of what would become Secret Wars, envisaging a desolate planet known as Battleworld that a collection of heroes and villains would be transported to by the Beyonder, an omnipotent interdimensional being who sought to determine whether or not good could triumph over evil. And in May of 1984, issue 1 of this highly anticipated comic book series would finally hit shelves, and readers around the world would brace themselves for something truly unlike anything they'd seen before. Prior to the first issue of Secret Wars, each of the characters and teams involved in this crossover had encountered a mysterious construct that suddenly appeared in Central Park, with issue 1 picking up with an epic full-page spread of all of the various heroes now inside of it. They all appear confused before a bright light appears in space, as the Beyonder informs the heroes that he has summoned them to his planet to take part in a battle against their most deadly enemies, as we see an identical ship carrying the likes of Galactus, Ultron, Kang the Conqueror, Doc Ock, and Doctor Doom. The Beyonder informs both sides that they will do battle with one another, and that the winning team will receive whatever prizes they might desire. However, instead of working together, each team immediately begins to fight amongst themselves, as the X-Men and the Avengers dispute over the presence of Magneto, while Ultron attempts to attack Galactus, who absorbs his energy and incapacitates him. It's during this fight amongst the villains, though, that Doctor Doom begins to come up with his grand plan for the story, as he plots to steal the Beyonder's powers and take them for himself. Despite these tensions amongst each team, though, the heroes and villains do find themselves engaging in an epic battle, while Doom reprograms Ultron to help him take down the Beyonder. Eventually, though, the heroes defeat the villains and force them to flee back to their base, where they find the reprogrammed Ultron there waiting for them, as Doctor Doom forces the villains to obey his command. Meanwhile, the heroes return and confront Magneto, who is strangely transported by the Beyonder alongside them. As this is going on, many of the heroes discover their powers and abilities are beginning to change, as Charles Xavier realizes that he can once again walk, and the Thing suddenly discovers that he can revert back to his human form. It's during this portion of the story, though, that Spider-Man overhears the X-Men proposing to leave the hero team and align with Magneto, which in turn leads to a fight between the Wallcrawler and the various members of the mutant team. Now, Peter actually manages to defeat most of the X-Men and races back to report their plan to the Avengers. However, before he can do this, Professor X enters his mind and causes Spider-Man to completely forget what they were planning. While the heroes struggle to coexist, Doctor Doom discovers that he now has the ability to grant powers to other beings, teleporting 2 women from Earth and christening them Titania and Volcana. With the added firepower, the villains ambush the heroes' base. As they flee, the villains use their combined power to throw a mountain onto the heroes, with the Hulk catching it and preventing their deaths. As the heroes regroup, they see Galactus standing atop a mountain, as the villain summons his ship and attempts to leave Battleworld and devour it. The X-Men and Magneto show up to fight Galactus, but Doctor Doom leads the villains in to ambush them. As the X-Men fight off the villains, Doom sneaks onto Galactus' ship, attempting to obtain his power. But the Eater of Worlds senses his presence and attacks Doom and ejects him from the ship. Witnessing this skirmish, Captain America leads the Avengers and Fantastic Four to join the fight, after they learn that She-Hulk has been ambushed and kidnapped by the enemies. The combined might of the heroes initially struggle to overcome their foes, before Cap and the Human Torch work together to beat Ultron, while the rest of the team manage to rescue She-Hulk. They bring her back to the headquarters, where the team repair their damaged costumes and regroup after the fight. Most notably, Reed Richards helps to repair Iron Man's armour, and in the process discovers that it's actually James Rhodes underneath the suit. Meanwhile, Spider-Man searches the base for a machine that can create costumes by thought, discovering what he thinks to be this machine, only for a black substance to land in his hand and transform itself into a brand new suit. This brief respite is cut short though, as Charles Xavier warns the heroes that he senses Galactus is coming to finally consume Battleworld. The climax of Secret Wars sees the heroes attempt to stop Galactus. However, as he unleashes the power cosmic, Doctor Doom begins to siphon off his power, causing a flash of white light. And when we return, Doom is now imbued with Galactus's power, as he uses it to attempt to kill the Beyonder. Travelling into deep space, Doom calls on the Beyonder to fight him, before the omnipotent being unleashes the extent of his own power, overwhelming Doom and causing him to crash back to Battleworld. However, when Doom awakens, he discovers his body enveloped in energy, as he realises that he somehow absorbed the power of the Beyonder. As his body heals and recreates itself, Doom is now more powerful than ever before, confronting the heroes and removing his mask, revealing an unscarred face, as he declares himself the winner of the war. The final issue sees the heroes face off against this now godlike Doom, with Captain America fearlessly fighting him as Doom atomizes him, only for Cap to reappear once again. This causes Doom to panic as his powers flare out of control, before the Beyonder shows up and reclaims his stolen power, restoring Doom to his mortal state and banishing him from Battleworld. With the war now over, all of the heroes return to their base, where Mr. Fantastic has built a teleportation device to send all of them home. Spider-Man, Hulk and the X-Men all make their way through the teleporter, before Ben Grimm approaches Reed with She-Hulk, who is now wearing a Fantastic Four costume. Ben reveals that he wants to stay on Battleworld, as he knows that returning to Earth will return his body to its rocky state, and as such, he's selected She-Hulk to replace him on the team. The two longtime friends share a knowing look as Reed hands Ben the teleportation device, allowing him to return home and rejoin the team whenever he is ready. And with this, the Secret Wars is now drawn to a triumphant conclusion. In a lot of ways, Secret Wars served as the template for many of the modern comic book crossovers fans know today, and helped usher in the way that Marvel especially would tell their stories in subsequent decades. A large-scale crossover that brought together all of the company's flagship heroes had never really been attempted prior to this, and the success of Secret Wars paved the way for more iconic stories in its vein, such as the Infinity Gauntlet, House of M, and Civil War. To say that Secret Wars was a success is an understatement, as it became the best-selling comic book series in a quarter of a century, with issue 1 in particular selling over 750,000 copies. Despite this massive success though, Secret Wars wasn't a comic without controversy, as some at the time noticed the similarities between it and the DC event Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, it should be noted that although Secret Wars was published first, with the final issue of it being released the same month as the first issue of Crisis, many within DC Comics felt that Marvel had stolen their storyline, one that the company had been teasing and building up to for many years, with Crisis being mentioned publicly as far back as 1981. According to DC assistant editor Bob Greenberger,
Crisis got announced first. I definitely think Marvel was being calculated in doing Secret Wars. Jim knew we were going to make noise. Jim knew full well, and he was being commercial and strategic. There was a definite rivalry going on, and Jim was doing what he could to make sure Marvel remains number one.
Nevertheless, I think the significance of both of these stories on the superhero landscape is unquestionable, as they both continue to inform the way that each company approaches their stories still to this day. In its immediate aftermath, Secret Wars ushered in a new status quo for many different characters, namely Spider-Man, with the comic introducing the alien symbiote that later becomes Venom, and the Fantastic Four, with She-Hulk replacing the Thing on the team, as well as launching a sequel comic that was released the following year, which saw the mysterious Beyonder travel to Earth. Overall though, Secret Wars is a comic book that I find genuinely fascinating, as the reasons behind its creation weren't necessarily built around telling a great story. Instead, it was created as a vehicle to promote an upcoming line of toys. And for a series that essentially acted as a commercial for action figures, Secret Wars has had such a notable impact on the comic book industry, to the point where it's actually dwarfed its initial purpose. The comic book has become far more well known than its toy line. Despite its somewhat unusual inception, I genuinely think this comic is a significant chapter in the company's history, both in the changing relationship between comic book companies and merchandising, and in the creation of modern event stories. And with all of this in mind, I genuinely think it's clear to say that Secret Wars is one of the most significant stories in the modern age of comics, and quite literally a story that changed the Marvel Universe forever. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on the video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talked about in today's video. I can't wait to hear what you have to say as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so you stay up to date with all of the new videos I release on the channel. And if you want some more videos, there should be some others on screen right now that you might also enjoy. If you want to help support the channel and help me make more videos, you can do so at patreon.com/OwenLikesComics. And if you want some more of me, you can follow me on Twitter, just at OwenLikesComics. That's all for this video though. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. So until then, take care and keep reading.